Near-death experience unveils the mystery of the impact of porn addiction. Welcome to a world of mystery and wonder. Have you ever wondered, is death truly the end, or merely a doorway to a mystical reality we have yet to comprehend? On this channel, I will guide you through strange and fascinating near-death experiences, where those who stood at the brink of life and death return to share stories that science cannot explain. Get ready for experiences beyond imagination, mysterious lights, extraordinary encounters, and supernatural phenomena you've never heard of before. Each video is a journey into a realm where the natural laws are defied, and one thing is certain: you won't be able to look away. If you love thrilling stories, if you want to dive deeper into the mysteries of death and the wonders that lie beyond, don't miss a single video. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on this exciting adventure. Are you ready? The journey toward the light. I used to live a quiet life in a small town, where the empty streets were only interrupted by the footsteps of early risers and the sound of falling leaves in autumn. This town, like many others, had a peaceful charm, a place where everyone knew each other and life moved slowly. The quaint houses with red-tiled roofs, the gardens full of flowers, and the fresh air every morning created a space that felt disconnected from the noisy outside world. Here, there were no crashing waves of the city, no hurried bustle of modern life. It was all calm, where time seemed to stop and allow everything to be at peace. My job was just as quiet. I worked at a small bookstore tucked away in a quiet alley. This was a place where I could find peace after long days, where I could lose myself in old books with fragile pages and covers that had faded with time. The job wasn't difficult. I simply stood there all day, rearranging books, helping customers find the books they liked. But no one knew that for me, these books were more than just simple stories. They were an escape. When I wasn't busy with work, I would spend time reading books. Each book brought me into a different world, a space where I could hide. Stories of love, adventures, brave warriors. I found temporary comfort in them. The characters in the books seemed like my only companions, and each time I closed a book, I felt like I had entered another world, a place where I could forget the worries and loneliness in my life. But there was one thing that no book could change, and that was the loneliness in my heart. Even though I lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, I felt like an outsider. They probably all knew me, but I couldn't fit into their lives. Everyone in the town had families, friends, people they could share their joys and sorrows with. But I had no one. No one understood me, and perhaps I didn't even understand myself. That loneliness pushed me into dark thoughts. I knew I was wrong. I knew that what I was doing was not right, but I couldn't stop. I was lost in an addiction I couldn't escape. Late at night, when everyone else had fallen asleep, I would sit in front of my computer screen, searching for things I knew I shouldn't be looking for. The feeling of guilt and regret weighed heavily on me, but I couldn't stop. Every time I tried to break the habit, those empty feelings returned, and I sank back into that dark world. The inner turmoil inside me became more and more apparent. On one hand, I knew I was destroying myself, but on the other, I didn't know what to do to escape the ghosts in my mind. Life went on, and I remained like a shadow, unable to step out of myself. Everything changed one day when I woke up with a sharp pain in my chest. I felt like my heart was about to stop beating. The pain spread through my body, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to stand up, but I fainted. The last thing I knew was that I was lying on the ground, feeling an overwhelming sadness, as if I was letting go of everything. When I opened my eyes again, I realized I was no longer in the world I once knew. There were no walls, no ceiling, no morning light streaming through the window. Around me was an empty, hazy space, as if both time and space had disappeared. The feeling I had was both unfamiliar and terrifying. An absolute silence enveloped everything. I stood there, not knowing where I was nor what to do. But this death was unlike anything I had heard or imagined. There was no brilliant light leading the way, no familiar faces greeting me with smiles. Instead, I was alone, more lost and lonelier than ever. I felt an odd emptiness inside, as if I were standing on the threshold of a terrifying truth I wasn't ready to face. The light was not brilliant, but only a dim glow that cast a strange feeling over the space, both familiar and unfamiliar, both warm and cold. I didn't know where I was. Time seemed to stand still, and the space had no clear boundaries. Everything kept moving without stopping, as if I were lost in a hazy dream I couldn't wake up from. I felt an invisible pull, dragging me through images like a slow-motion film. These were the pieces of my own life. I saw myself as a boy who lost his father early, growing up in the loving arms of my mother, a frail but strong woman. The years of youth filled with dreams, then the failures, the times I gave up without facing them. I remembered moments when I looked into the mirror and wondered, am I living the right way? The journey toward the light. The image of myself kept appearing, a middle-aged man with sorrowful eyes, a face full of wrinkles from weariness. I saw myself standing alone in a dark room, the desk cluttered with papers, the light from the computer screen reflecting off my red, sleep-deprived eyes. I couldn't remember exactly what I had done over the years, but one thing I was sure of, I didn't feel happy. In fact, I didn't even know what I was doing anymore. But what confused me the most wasn't the image of myself, but the strangers who appeared in my memories. They were faces I had never met, yet their eyes were filled with pain and reproach. I couldn't understand why they looked at me like that, but I felt an eerie presence of those I had hurt, or those I had abandoned throughout my life's journey. Then, in that quiet space, a cold voice rang out, like an accusation from some deep, distant place. "How have you lived, Thomas?" The question struck me like a fatal blow, cutting deep into my heart. I couldn't answer. I knew I couldn't answer. The answers would just be excuses for things I could never change. I wondered, was my life of any value? How had I lived to leave so much pain for people I didn't even recognize? Those faces kept flashing through my mind, their eyes full of pain and disappointment, as if they were looking at me, waiting for an apology I didn't know how to give. The space continued to drown in silence, but I could clearly feel the guilt rising within me. I had lived as a selfish person, chasing personal goals without caring about those around me. My wrong decisions, missed opportunities, unkept promises, all of them were coming back to ask me, how had I lived? For the first time in my life, I felt a real fear. Not fear of death, but fear of facing myself. Fear that I would never be able to fix the mistakes of the past. That question wasn't just an accusation, it was a reminder that I had not lived fully. I didn't know what I could do, but I understood that I had reached a point of no return, and my life would never be the same again. I took a step back, fear rising within me. The faces around me were faces I could not recognize, but their silence, their questioning eyes, made me feel like a criminal. The guilt washed over me like waves, pulling me down, each second heavier than the last. I don't know. Who are you? I stammered, my voice trembling. None of them answered. Only that voice, steady and unyielding, echoed like a bell within my heart. How have you lived, Thomas? The light around me began to change, a wave of memories pulling me in. Everything started to blur, then gradually came into focus, like slow-motion footage I couldn't stop watching. Each image appeared, Each scene from my life, the things I had tried to forget, came back before my eyes. I saw myself in the office, where a colleague, his face drawn with worry, was asking for my help on a project. He looked at me with anxious eyes, but I simply shook my head, turning him down. I was too busy with my own work, and to me, he was just invisible. Seeing the disappointment in his eyes, I couldn't help but feel ashamed, but at that moment, all I could think about was myself. The image shifted. Now it was a torrential rainy afternoon, and I was standing by the road, clutching my expensive suit, fearing the rain would ruin it. Then I saw an elderly woman struggling with a shopping cart full of items. She stumbled and fell, her bags scattered across the street. I stood there, watching it all, but I did nothing. I turned my back and walked away quickly, just to protect my suit from getting wet. Next, another image appeared. I saw myself walking down a crowded street, and there was a begging child, his eyes pleading, raising his hand asking for help. His gaze tore at my heart, but I just walked past, avoiding his eyes, too scared to stop. I didn't know why, but at that moment, all I wanted was to get away from him. Each memory kept appearing, and with each one my heart grew heavier. I wanted to scream, to explain, to say I wasn't a bad person. But no words came from my mouth. I just stood there, unable to move, trapped in a chain of memories I couldn't escape. A voice echoed once more, this time gentle but full of pain. What do you think when you see these things? Do you see yourself in them, Thomas? I shook my head, feeling buried under the weight of my actions. Each image was me, my decisions, and I couldn't deny them. Finally, the memory stopped at a sunset evening. I stood alone in the office, gazing out the window, feeling empty inside. Everything outside seemed perfect, but I felt as though I was standing on a cliff with emptiness beneath me. I realized that all the coldness, the indifference I had shown others, couldn't make me any happier. The light around me faded, and the voice spoke one last time, clear and sharp as a knife. How have you lived, Thomas? Do you want to change? I collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down my face. That question was a statement, one I couldn't escape. I didn't answer, but I knew that I had to change. After those images, the light slowly disappeared, replaced by an inky blackness. The feeling of darkness enveloped me, as if I had fallen into an endless abyss, a place where there was nothing but emptiness. I stood in that space, not knowing how long I had been there. It could have been just a few minutes, or it could have been an eternity. Time no longer had meaning, and space had no boundaries, everything passing by in a fog I couldn't touch. All of my senses were cloaked, with no connection between reality and what I was going through. I felt like a nameless speck of dust in the vast universe, being swept away with no anchor, no place to return to. The feeling of loneliness overtook me, as if I were standing before destruction, with no one to lift me up, no one to share in this pain. In the darkness, it was just me and my own fear. The questions kept repeating in my mind, but there were no answers. I didn't know what I was searching for, and I didn't know if anyone was waiting for me. Then, in that silent space, the voice spoke again, this time softer, like a cold breeze blowing through every corner of my soul. What will you choose, Thomas? To continue living, or to stay here? The question suddenly pierced the silence, like a thorn straight to my heart. I froze, unable to answer immediately. The words echoed in my mind, repeating over and over, as if I were trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. I didn't want to die, but at the same time, I was afraid to face reality. Afraid to continue a life filled with so many failures, wrong choices, and missed opportunities. Afraid to confront decisions that couldn't be undone, the things I had done that hurt those I loved. Every step in my life had been an uncorrected mistake. I recalled the moments I gave up, the times I didn't have the courage to fight for what I wanted. Each time I looked back, all I saw was disappointment, regret, and opportunities slipping through my fingers. I knew I had lived a wasted life, always trying to run away from problems instead of confronting and solving them. For so many years, I hadn't dared to face myself, to accept what I had overlooked, the people I had hurt, the promises I hadn't kept. But then, in the vast darkness, a memory suddenly emerged, bringing me to my senses. I remembered my mother. I remembered the woman who had sacrificed her life to raise and teach me. She was the only one who always believed in me, who hoped I would become a good person, someone useful to society and to those around me. She never asked for anything except for me to live a life of value. But I had failed. I had disappointed her so many times. I remember every morning my mother would wake up early, watching me leave with hopeful eyes, and then worry when I returned late at night without saying a word. I remember the times I saw my mother cry silently, thinking I didn't see. She sacrificed so much, but I did nothing to make her proud. Every time I looked at her, I only saw sadness in her eyes, a sadness I couldn't soothe. I can't let my mother be disappointed anymore. I can't let her see that her son has lived without meaning. She has given me everything, and I've let her witness me squander every opportunity. I can't go on like this. I must change. I must live differently. For my mother, for the hopes she placed in me. I can't keep passing up opportunities. I can't keep running from myself. I took a deep breath, and even in the darkness, I felt some power rising within me. I want to live, but I want to live differently, I answered, my voice full of determination, even though inside me there were still fears and doubts. But at least now I found a reason to live, a reason strong enough to keep me from going back down the old path, strong enough to make me change, strong enough that I won't disappoint my mother again. The voice fell silent, but I could still feel its presence lingering in the dark space around me. It seemed like the space around me was starting to change, as if I were stepping out of the darkness. I don't know what the road ahead will be like, but at least I found a spark in my soul. I am no longer the man I once was, the one who only knew how to run and live in avoidance. I've decided to change, to live a meaningful life for those I love and for myself. The darkness still enveloped me, but this time I didn't feel alone. I knew that no matter how hard the road ahead might be, I was ready to walk it, ready to face whatever I must. And most importantly, I knew that I would not waste another second of my life. I slowly opened my eyes, the feeling of my mind being foggy, as if I had just woken up from a long dream. The light from the hospital lamps illuminated the emergency room, making the space feel cold and silent. The smell of antiseptic in the air made me feel nauseous, but there was nothing I could do but lie still on the bed. Sweat soaked my forehead, but the chest pain had completely disappeared. My heart was racing, but this time it wasn't out of panic or fear. It was a strange feeling, a feeling I had never had before, gratitude. Life felt like a precious gift I had never truly appreciated until now. The doctor entered the room, his face tense, but unable to hide the relief when he saw I had regained consciousness. "Thomas, you had a heart attack. Fortunately, we brought you in on time. You need to rest, and we'll monitor your health for the next few days. You're really lucky." I didn't respond immediately, just silently looked at the doctor. But my mind sank deep into thoughts. The image of the heart attack from earlier came flooding back, a sensation like a violent wave sweeping everything away, and I could only gasp for breath for a brief moment. The overwhelming fear when I realized I might not survive. The doctor left, and I turned back to the window. Snow was still falling. each white snowflake gently descending to the ground, as if time was passing more slowly than usual. Everything out there was still peaceful, but inside me was a storm. I could clearly feel life flowing through my body, a strong and unfamiliar sensation. I had been given a new chance, and I knew I couldn't let it slip by meaninglessly. Looking back on the years that have passed, I realize I lived a life without anything special. I lived in daily routines, worked steadily, but never dared to think of anything grand or change my life. Now, after the heart attack, I realize that life can change at any moment, and if I don't live meaningfully, everything will pass by without leaving anything behind. The moments I had missed came back to me, the times I didn't call my family when I could, the times I didn't express my true feelings to the ones I loved, the times I avoided challenges instead of facing them and overcoming them. But now, everything is different. I've been given an opportunity, and I won't let it pass by meaninglessly anymore. I silently promised myself that I would live a meaningful life. I would cherish every moment, every person, and every opportunity life gives me. I would no longer let the small things steal my focus. I will live with gratitude and strong determination, because I know that every day of life is an immeasurable gift. I returned to the bookstore where everything began, but this time I wasn't alone. I brought with me an orphan boy I had adopted after a charity trip to an orphanage. The boy, with his big round eyes and small hands, walked beside me like a new hope, like a companion I never expected. Each step I take now is not just to exist, but to live better, to answer the question that once haunted me in that strange space: how have you lived, Thomas? In the past, I was just an ordinary person, living in the never-ending cycle of work and responsibilities. I used to think that life was just a long string of days passing by without much meaning. I was busy with all the trivial things, with shallow goals set by society, and I felt lost in a world full of clutter, unable to find a stopping point. I still clearly remember the feeling of emptiness whenever I looked into the mirror, whenever I asked myself, why am I here? What am I living for? Everything changed when I met the boy. I can't forget the first time I saw him in the orphanage. He was unlike the other children. Despite carrying the pain of loss, his eyes shone with hope, a light that I hadn't seen in myself for so long. The boy had nothing except what life had taken from him, but it was the love and kindness of those around him that helped him overcome his struggles. When I adopted the boy, I wasn't just his caregiver, I was also a learner from him. With each passing day, I felt a great change within my soul. The boy taught me about resilience, optimism, and especially unconditional love. I began to see the world through a new lens, one filled with empathy and love. What I once considered struggles and burdens now seemed much lighter when I could share them with others, especially with the boy. Next to the boy, I felt a strength I had never known. The questions about life and the meaning of existence no longer haunted me. Instead, I realized that life has meaning not because of what we achieve, but because of what we can give. Every moment I saw the boy smile, heard his joyful laughter, I knew I was living the right way. I no longer chased after superficial things, but instead, I lived for those around me, for the people I love.
Every day with the boy is a new lesson, an opportunity for me to become a better person, to live more fully. The boy is not just hope in my life, but he also helped me realize that life is not just about existence, but about how we live, how we love, and help others. As we entered the bookstore, I felt a change in the atmosphere. Everything seemed the same, but it carried a new breath. Looking at the bookshelves, it felt as though they were opening new pages, new stories, and new opportunities for us. I took the boy's hand and said, "We will write a new story here. A story not only about the past, but about what we will do in the future." The boy smiled, his eyes bright as if he understood everything I was feeling. At that moment, I no longer searched for an answer to the question that had haunted me for so long. I realized that the question, "How have you lived?" was no longer a worry, but a reminder of my responsibility to life. Life isn't about what we've had, it's about what we can create for others, for those who need us. And that's the reason I live, the reason I keep moving forward no matter how many difficulties or challenges life may bring. Thank you for joining me on this miraculous journey. I hope the near-death stories we've explored together will open up new perspectives on life, death, and the mysteries that we have yet to explain. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next videos, where you'll step into a mysterious world where science and the supernatural intersect. Let's continue to explore and experience things that few dare to believe. Thank you for being with me, and I'll see you in the next video.